Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be working on this expansion joint that is between my garage slab and then the driveway pad. Now over time the board that was put in between these two slabs when it was poured has degraded and in many places has completely disappeared. So I want to make sure that this is completely sealed up, because the last thing that I want to have happening is a bunch of water getting down in between these slabs underneath of the foundation, and it could cause foundation issues, especially if you're in a colder climate with the temperatures rising and lowering, and where it gets really cold, you could really see a lot of expansion and contraction going on. Now this particular repair is going to be relatively easy to do. I'm just going to use a couple of different products in order to make it happen. For one of the products, I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch closed cell backer rod. And this one's made by Sitka, but there's a lot of other brands out there as well that also make this. You just want to make sure that you're getting the size backer rod that you need for the particular size gap that you have. And then I'm also going to be using a self-leveling sealant. This is also made by Sitka, and in my opinion, this is far and away the best product for this particular application to use. It lasts a long time, and you're going to see in a moment just how easy it is to apply. Now the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to prep the entire surface, and as you can see over here to the left, that is just a giant gap. The board that was once there is no longer there anymore, but over here to the right, there's still sections like this where I still have some of that board that was originally installed in this expansion joint, and I'm going to have to remove all of those sections to make sure that I'm able to seal everything up properly and everything looks uniform. And I found that it's pretty easy to use a fairly long and wide screwdriver to pry out the existing board. And as I'm removing this, I want to make sure that I'm leaving a nice bed for my base and everything to sit nice and flat on. Now for some of you, maybe you never had one of these boards that was installed in between, and in which case you just have a giant gap that by now is probably filled up with dirt. And in that case, you want to make sure that you're cleaning all the dirt out so that you have a nice bed for everything to lay flat on as well. I want to create a gap that's going to allow for the backer rod to sit down in there nice and flat, and also to where it's not loose. I want it to fit in there nice and tight. After I've gotten all of that board removed and gotten a nice base for everything, now I'm going to go across the entire expansion joint on both sides and use a brush in order to clean up everything to create a nice surface for the self-leveling sealant to adhere to. If there's dirt or any kind of debris on it, it's going to look nice at first, but after it cures out over some time, you're more than likely going to see some disbonding from the concrete. So it's really important to make sure that the surface is prepped well. Also, any chunks of concrete that are adhered to the slab, I want to make sure that I chisel those off as well to get those out of the way. Now that everything is pried up and brushed down, now I'm just going to take a shop vac and just clean up the whole area and just suck up all of the debris and all the loose granules that are in the application area. And I'm also going to make sure that the vacuum picks up any of the loose stuff that's left down in the gap. So now that everything's cleaned up, now I can actually start applying everything. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to address all of my areas in the gap that are very deep. I need to bring up that surface. I'm aiming for between 3/4 of an inch to an inch below the top of the surface. I want to make sure that everything is brought up to an equal level and have a good base. If you're going to be running over it with your car, you want to make sure you have a good base so that everything doesn't come undone. And I'm going to do that in these deep areas by using some multi-purpose sand that you can pick up pretty much anywhere. And as you can see here, my gap is actually under 3/4 of an inch. It's at 5/8 of an inch. So that's going to be perfect for that 3/4 inch backer rod that I've got. And I say that's going to be good for me because the backer rod's 3/4 of an inch. I want it to fit in there nice and snug. I want it to actually be forced in there. I don't want it to be loose at all. Now for some people, their gaps are going to be much larger than this, and in those cases you can actually double up the backer rod by basically twisting it together all the way down. But in most instances, people are going to have a gap that is similar to this. So my focus the entire way down is I want to make sure that backer rod is actually a little bit below the surface. I want to make sure there's going to be plenty of room for me to come over the top with my sealant, and I personally don't want the top of my sealant to be above or even at the top of the concrete. If you're pulling a car in and out of there, I personally would like it to be just below the surface to where tires are not really going to be making very much contact with it, therefore pushing it down and possibly causing it to come loose. But this is incredibly easy to do, and I do find that using a screwdriver in places also helps with pushing the backer rod down where I need it. All right, so now that the backer rod is in place, now I can start applying the self-leveling sealant. But I want to show you a real quick trick to getting this open that a lot of people don't really know about. Now on most caulk guns, there's going to be a hole somewhere on the handle that you can insert the tip of the caulk tube into, And then once the tip of the caulk tube is in the caulk gun hole, then you just pull the handle and a blade will release forward and cut the tip of the caulk tube off. Then after that, there's usually a thin piece of metal towards the end of the caulk gun that can swing out and will puncture the seal that is down inside. Most people use a knife and then a screwdriver to puncture the seal. This is just a whole lot more efficient and faster. So with this particular sealant, you have to apply it at least a minimum of 1/4 of an inch. This is going back to making sure earlier that there was enough space down in the gap to push down the backer rod, to then allow enough space on top of the backer rod to apply this sealant. It can be applied at a maximum of 1/2 of an inch. Now what's so great about this particular sealant is it says it's self-leveling, and it does a really good job of doing that. You do not have to come across it with a trowel or anything like that to smooth it out. It's going to do it all on its own, and then after it's all done, it's going to look great. Now just as a word of caution to those that have had a large gap where water's been able to just pour into it for a long period of time, you can still do this repair, and it very well may take care of your issue, but just be aware that it is possible that enough time has gone by where water's been able to go in and erode the dirt that's underneath of the concrete to where you're getting some rise and fall. What you may find is in the winter and summer months, you may notice that your concrete has moved, as the sealant may not be adhered to one side or the other anymore. This is just due to too much time going by of water getting up underneath. So overall, this turned out really well, and it was really easy to do and really inexpensive also. By doing this, you could be saving a ton of money down the road by avoiding some very expensive bills that could come from foundational issues. So I hope this video was helpful for you, and maybe it's got you outside looking at your foundation to make sure that everything is good to go. If it was helpful, please let me know by giving the video a thumbs up. And of course, if you have any questions at all, you can leave those down in the comment section down below. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See ya.